Hi everyone, it's Karen and I'm back to share my design team projects that I completed for the end of February. I sort of got carried away having fun with these fabric samples that I showed in my design team package. They're about, I think they're 10 by 6, 9.5 by 6, and I think this one was a little bit bigger, and they were like I said, fabric samples, and I decided to use them as book covers. They make the cutest little books and covers, and I made 2 needle books, 1 full journal, and just the cover for another journal. I just wanted to show you how beautiful they actually work. This one I did as a needle book for myself. I've been stitching a lot and I had my needles everywhere. I decided they needed to go into a proper book. And all the fabrics that Kim sent me in my package were really nice too. So you can see the fabric. I tried to keep as much of the fabric exposed on some of them. Some I got overzealous and covered them up a bit. This is a trim from Kim's shop here, this beautiful braid trim. It wasn't in my design team package. I believe she's getting that back in the shop. It's very popular. It's very pretty. I had that little piece left and it fit there perfectly. This is one of her ruffle trims, which is very popular, and if it's not available, it will be in the store, and she often carries other colors in this as well. And then this is one of the little wooden butterfly buttons that she had in the shop, and again I think she still may have those, and I just put one of those on the back cover. I put the felt pages in for my needles with as a signature, and I just put some embroidery floss and some beads and some charms hanging off of that. And then the front I embroidered on a piece of cotton, and then I just added in all these flowers. This bunny is one of the napkins that I embroider on the napkin. So the brown part of the bunny is actually the napkin itself, and I just enhance it with outline, put his little whiskers on, gave him a fluffy tail with some turkey stitching, and added a little tatted butterfly, a couple of them on here. And then this little bird is also a napkin, and I stitched him, and I added sort of some loops on his chest to add some texture and some interest. And then I added in some little leaves I had from another trim, and then added some little French knots in there to look like flowers and buds. And there's some little beads scattered in amongst the flowers on the bottom here as well, because I like to add those into my stitching as well. I did a a blanket stitch around the edge of this in the green thread, the same green that I used for the binding. And then on the edge of the pages I put this pretty trim from Kim's shop that I added some stitches and some sequins and little beads on to add some interest to the middle of the little flowers on that trim. And that was the last I had of that trim from a previous design team package. I hope she gets more of that trim in. It's beautiful. And I lined this one with this fabric that I had, and I just cut it to fit the size of the fabric sample, and then when I used the blanket stitch around the edge, it stitched it all into place. I didn't use any glue for this book at all. It is all hand stitched, and I really like it. It turned out nice. It has 4 pages, lots of my needles, some pins, my tatting needles all fit in there, and I'm going to do a little pocket in the back for my scissors, because this is a pocket in the front here, and I have some extra needles in here that I haven't taken out yet because I don't need them, and I can put my needle threader in there, although it's not in there at the moment. But the scissors just slide out, and because they're those sharp little embroidery scissors, I want to make a little pouch that has a little snap on it so that they can hold in place. So that's one. This is one, you would have seen this image in my design team package that Kim sent me, and it's printed on some heavy cardstock, and I wanted to use this with this black and cream colored fabric, that sample that was sent, and I used the dangle trim, and I told you I was going to cut it apart and use it a different way. So instead of keeping it as a dangle trim, which, excuse my reach across here, I happen to have the piece of it lying here. This is what it looked like. So I took all the dangles off, and I actually took the row of these off as well, and I used it as a trim around the whole photo. And I used some of the dangles that I cut off. I made a tassel here out of them and added some other trim in that Kim had in the shop and made this pretty little tassel. I added some pieces of sari silk or sari fabric and flowers, and I don't know, I have all my sari stuff thrown together, and I know I had a whole bundle from Kim, and Kim still has sari stuff in her shop, and some of this may be from her and some was from my stash. So I used some of the sari on there as well. I did a little embellishing on the photo itself. I added a little tiny stone from some of the sari stuff I had for her earring. I added some gold stickles onto this long necklace that she has on that goes underneath part of her dress. And then at the bottom there was something hanging on it, so I hung there you can see I used the stone from the middle for an earring, and then the other piece I used the whole thing and hung it at the bottom for the pendant on her necklace. And then I used some of the sari silk that she sent. I used it as a tie on this one, and I just looped it through the signature threads on the side of the page so it's loose. It could come out all together. On the end of this tassel, I've attached a pink ribbon, made it so that it could be used as a bookmark within the book, and I'll show you that when I open it up. I decided to use her as a flip on the front page to add a little bit more room to this little journal. So when you first flip this open, there is I lined the inside of this one with just some tea-stained papers, and then Kim had sent along some coffee-stained papers which I used within the journal itself. The first one I lined the fabric sample with fabric. This one I used paper, and it worked fine. I just glued it directly onto the fabric sample. And then I added some digital papers that I have. I added a pocket in here, and I put a little tag with a rose on it. I sort of went with the black and white and then added some pink and rosy colors in with this, and I think it actually complements really nice with the black. I had this black lace in my stash, and I used that on the bottom, and I also added a piece of it here to make a pocket, which I put a little card in. But there's enough room in there that I think what I would do is I'm going to change it and put a little extra journal in there, so there's extra journaling space as well. But it's got lots of room inside. I've left almost the pages entirely able to be journaled on. I added a little heart dangle here. It's black, and it's on a black pin, and these pins Kim had in her shop at 1.2. They're lovely for dangling things off of pages. Don't think she has them in at the moment, but again, maybe getting them back. This is the dangle trim again that I cut off the bottom. Here it is here, and I used it to run down the page and kind of swoop out as a bit of a swag on the top and the bottom there as well. So it just shows you how you can cut up a piece of dangle trim and use it in different ways as well. So that's the cover, and then this is opening up into the journal. I use the same digital paper for over top the tea-stained paper for lining, extra piece in the middle to reinforce the center of the journal, and this is also a spot where they can tuck little treasures in. This is that beautiful paper that Kim included in my design team package, and all I did was a little bit of embellishment in here. I added some paper clips, I added some tabs. Again, this is part of that trim. These little pieces, they're in the middle of the trim here, and some of these I had cut off, if you remember, to make the front one. So I used those little pieces as little embellishments on some of the pages. I used a little piece of it here on this pin with a little wing charm that I had, and some beads on a bulb pin. Kim has bulb pins and charms in her shop. This is one of the black tags that she sent me in my design team package, and I used it horizontally on the page and added a pink, now I can't remember the name of that, anyways, you know what that is. And I dangled this off the edge and some pink lace in here. And so when you do it that way, it sticks outside the journal, and it works sort of as a tab and as an embellishment, and I love it. I think it's a cool idea. And then I just tucked in a couple of fussy cut little roses that I've used throughout the journal as well. The person could then take them and put them on a page or use them somewhere else. They're very pretty. They're a digital download that I have, and I just fussy cut them out. And then there's a tag in here, and this tag also, so this is sort of a double belly band as well. Serves a lot of purposes. Tab, a place to put embellishments, and then I put this other piece of paper on here as well, so that I made a belly band, and I made this a belly band as well. You could glue it down differently so that it wasn't all those things, but I decided to make it as many things as I could. And then in the back of it is this journaling card, and just one of my favorite stamps. The joy of the journey is best measured by the friends, not the miles. And again, another one of my digital download roses that I fussy cut out. As I said, most of the pages I left blank, a little bit of washi, one of my paper clips that I made in my embellishments. This one they're double-sided, and it had all the right colors, so I put it in here. Oh, let's take the clips off. I guess I forgot to do that. When I attach things onto pages, I often clip them on with these little plastic wonder clips, which I use in my crafting all the time, because it means that I can turn the page and keep on crafting, and things don't slip and slide if the glue's taking a minute to grab. And so I just put a little tag, it's actually a tag, and I embellished it and put it there as a tuck spot. This is another digital download I have that is for putting in you can do several things with it, but I love to put them in the middle of a journal. I think they just look so pretty, and and you can still journal on the back of it and on the pages, but it kind of adds that beautiful interest in the middle. Another paper clip, another tab with a little bit of lace and some beads hanging off of it. And here is the bookmark that attaches to the tassel on the front. And so you can put this, of course, anywhere you want as you're working through your journal, wherever you may want to have it. And I just embellished a little butterfly with some blings and some pearls for the antennae to put on the bottom of that. Piece of lace from my design team package, using it as a tab, and also a place to put a little dangle off of. Here's that other black tag that was in my design team project. Added the half of a paper doily. Again, some of those fussy cut roses, a little bit of lace and some charms on it. Another little piece of that trim. Just add lots of little interest. And then it's a tuck spot. Tucked a couple of tags in there. Another tab here. And I added in, I think, 1 or 2 pieces of music paper. And then here's the back, and this is I made another pocket here. And then the very back of it, I wrapped that black lace out of my stash around the whole back. Here you can see the fabric. It's actually very nice, pretty fabric. Here you can see the zigzag edge. And I actually thought there's no need to really cover it completely if you don't want to. It's not like it's a horrible looking edge. And I think there's so much else going on that in the end you don't even hardly notice it. I put some more of that trim again from this dangle trim. I had all those ones that I'd cut off, so I rotated them and put them down the side of the little journal here. I sewed on some little beads. This one is a combination of hand sewing and gluing, this journal. And then I made a little dangle again with some of these little bits. I used some of them to go across the bottom here. And I had this piece of bling in my stash, and it was in the blacks, and looked like it just fit on this journal really well, so I put it there. Thought it was really pretty. A pretty surprise to find on the back of your journal. So that's this one all finished. And although you may have looked at that piece of fabric and thought, oh, don't really care for it, might not have appealed to you, I really think with the black and the pink and the white, it's all come together really nicely, and I'm really pleased with it. I'm not going to take the time to tie it all closed again. Just going to put it behind. This is another one that I made. Again, a piece of fabric from Kim's shop. And this one, I decided to do the cantha stitches on it, which is just a straight stitch, but you do them, you can either do them, you know, right beside each other or alternating. And I picked out a color from the image. This is a fabric image I printed out and I had in my stash that I hadn't used previously when I did some, I think, a fairy journal. And so I decided to use it because it was in my stash. And so I chose the sort of peachy orange out of there and did the cantha stitching. Stitched this beautiful cotton trim that was in my design team package from Kim's shop. I stitched that all around the edge. You can see the stitches there. I used a variegated embroidery floss, so it changes colors from greens to turquoise to kind of a peachy color. And the branches on the back of the page here, I decided to just embellish them a bit with French knots. So I did all kinds of little flowers using French knots on these branches. Added a little bird that I embroidered. It was a napkin that I used as my base pattern. Embroidered it on there, and then the only bit of the napkin that ended up being left afterwards, this part is the middle of the napkin, which has some coloring in it and actually looks, I drew colors out of it, so it all kind of ties together. And it meant I didn't have to stitch the whole center of that little hummingbird. And then I added another little hummingbird up at the top here. This one was totally stitched on a napkin on cotton fabric, and then I fussy cut it out and I stitched it onto the page there. And I think I added a tiny bit of glue behind her as well. And I sewed the pages in with this one with some thread, and I used beads on the binding, on the outside binding on this one as an enhancement. And I added a little fairy charm hanging off the bottom. Kim has had these charms in her shop before. I'm sure she'll get them back in. On the front, I put the image down on just a piece of cotton, so it raised it up a little bit, but not too much. I again used the dangle trim as the trim around the edge of the image. And before I put that on, I had stitched around it just with some irregular overcast stitches in a gold colored embroidery thread, because I knew it would peek out underneath the rest of the edging when and I did glue this on. And then to enhance the photo, I stitched on the mane of the horse with a variegated thread. Actually, this is the same thread that the lace is stitched on with, so you can see the colors there. I put, the unicorn had, it's actually a unicorn, not a horse. It had a flower in its hair, so I just enhanced that a bit with some embroidery floss, and I enhanced the unicorn's horn with some metallic pink thread. And then I put some little French knots and stuff in her hair, in her little headband, and then I did her wings. They were green, and I stitched them with green with some green metallic thread mixed in with my regular green embroidery floss, so that adds that sparkle in there. And then the bottom of the page, there were a few little light colored flowers, but nothing really much. So I just decided to go my own way, and I totally built this little garden on the bottom of the image here. And I just added in lazy daisy stitch and French knots and chain stitch and straight stitch, back stitch, and then I added in some beads as well. So these blue ones are about 3 different colors of blue beads. And the pink here are all French knots. That's a lazy daisy. Added in a couple of different greens for stems and for grass. And just built this pretty little garden that kind of, I feel, matches the whole thing. And then in the corner here, I decided to do a flower collection because Kim had sent that collection of flowers in my design team package, and they're just so pretty. And I used them, of course, on the box. You saw that on my last design team project. And I still had some left. So I took one of the big paper roses, and I took the bottom layer off, and I used it here separately. And then I stickled it up. I stickled everything up, so it's all got a bit of a sparkle to it. These are the foam roses. This This is a foam rose with the bottom petal removed, and this is the two foam roses here, and they're just the buds from the center. So you just peel back the layers of the rose. I've got pieces of it here, but I don't have anything left to show you. They basically fit into each other, and they're just lightly glued, and you just have to peel them off. And then you can get down to a smaller size if that's what you need. And I like the little buds, so I went right down to the middle where the bud was, and then I put that in here and here. I added in, again, going back to that dangle trim, these, when I looked at them individually, I thought, well, you know, they kind of look like petals. They kind of look like little leaves. So I cut individual ones, and I tucked them here and there amongst the flowers here. And they just add a little bit of more texture. They add a little bit of sparkle because this has kind of got a bit of a shine in the thread that lace is made with. So I thought it looked really nice. Stuck a little pink ribbon rose in there. I think that's originally from Kim's shop. I had it in my stash, but I'm pretty sure it came from her shop originally, and she does have some ribbon roses in the shop. A little doily that I had made that I just tucked in here because it brought out the pink from the rose, and also this is one of my beaded buttons that I've put here in the middle of this flower, and I used a pink thread when I did the beading on it, and so this pink doily also helps pull the pink of the thread out in that. And I just think the pink and the peachy colors, they all kind of go together nicely, and I liked how that went. And I love doing these beaded buttons. They're really fun to do, and they make such pretty little centers for flowers. And I am going to attach a video on the very end. So if you want to know how I make them, I've never seen them anywhere. I just came up with the idea last year when I was doing some of my hand stitching. I wanted a flower center, and I have beads and I have little white buttons, and I thought I'm gonna put something together, and that's what I came up with. I was pretty happy with how they've turned out, and I've made quite a few of them. This book I made into a needle book as well, but this one I made, it will go as probably as a giveaway on my channel at some point. I filled it with a stick pin and pin type ideas. Now this one, I did leave all the stitching visible on the inside cover. This one had this fabric already on the back side. One had already been finished. It was the only one of the grouping that I got in my design team package that was actually finished. So I left that fabric on there, and then when I stitched, you can see all my stitches. I think seeing the hand stitching is something that's quite popular now. So on the pages, I put in some white flannel for the pages. I used some of this pretty embroidered trim that Kim had, and it was in my design team package. I love this trim. It's so pretty. And I added that on the edges of the pages. On this first page, I added in accessories so people can do some of their own stick pins if they got this book. I added in some beads on some of the bulb pins, which the bulb pins are in Kim's shop. I added in a little butterfly charm there and a little owl charm here. I added in some rondelles on another bulb pin, and then this one I did some beads and a little dangle, and this one has a These are two straight pins which I have made into, although they're small, they make really pretty little stick pins as well, and so I added on some beads and some dangle there. I used one of my crocheted flowers in the corner, one of Kim's little heart blings in the center of that. It's very pretty. This is that trim that was in my design team package that is a dangle trim, but I love cutting the flowers off and using them in projects, as you saw that I did in the box as well. And then this is the middle page, and what I did here was I did again one of my stitching on a napkin, and this pretty little bird I stitched, and she's on her little branch and all stitched up, and I glued her onto the page there, and added one of my little crocheted doilies in this corner with a little trim. Again, was in Kim's shop at one point, put a piece of bling in the center of that. This page I just covered with some handmade stick pins and another one of my little beaded buttons. Let's not let's see if I can get it to lay proper. There we go. So this one's all in pinks, and I put a little piece of bling in the center of that one. So I just hooked it very gently through a ball pin on there, but that could be taken off and put in a flower center. One of my beaded butterflies that I still like creating, and I put that on a ball pin with some beads. And then, like I said, these are all just handmade stick pins. And there's the middle signature. I just used this coppery colored thread that I had. It's quite a heavy metallic embroidery thread, and I used that to tie the page in. And then on this side, I did, again, you can see the stitching. There's the bird, and then all the branch from where I went up the branch to do all my French knots for my flowers, and the cantha stitching on the top and the bottom. And then I did a couple more stick pins. There's a little stick pin with one of those heart pins, and you just use the smaller beads, and it's smaller. All the stick pins in the book, I have the little earring backs on the bottom, so they're not going to be sharp and they don't fall out of your project. This is a little angel I created with a little heart. This is a flower that I created and put on the side here. This is a piece of bling from Kim's shop. And then I did 3 little tatted butterflies, because that's my favorite thing to do right now, is these little tatted butterflies. I just love them. And I just put them on ball pins to show that they're loose in here and could be taken off and attached, either pinned to a project, or you can actually glue them down on a project too. So that's the little needle book with that cover. And then the final one there was a sneak peek of this one in the one video I did on my stitching on napkins, because this is part of a napkin underneath here, all stitched with the flowers. The bird cage is part of that napkin as well, and it's all stitched, and there's the cotton fabric underneath, and there is a video on stitching on napkins that you can see on my channel. If I don't remember to link it, it's the one just before this one, so you don't have to go very far down to find it. This little kitty is again a napkin that I stitched, back stitch on, and added the little collar with some embroidery floss. And she is stitched and a little bit glued onto there, and a little tatted butterfly on her tail, and a little bee that, again, I used the napkin that I had that had this beautiful bee on it, and was able to do all this nice little stitching on the fancy wings. And then I just did the bullion stitches as usual that everybody does for the bee's body. And this one, again, I did a blanket stitch around the edge. I added this pretty cream trim that Kim has in the shop, and I added that to the bottom, and these pretty buttons that I had in my stash, I sewed those on, and added that trim goes down this side as well. The back, this is the fabric that was in that fabric sample, another really pretty fabric. They lend themselves well to just about anything that you want to put on them. And on the back, I did a little cluster of tatted flowers and some little pistil stitch flowers, and a little stitched bird, again on a napkin, and then applied in here. And then a little tatted butterfly with some added French knots that I put up in the corner. And the inside of this one, I lined it with a digital paper that I like that had a hummingbird on it. And I put another piece of her trim. This was another braid trim she had in the shop. She might even still have a little bit of this one in the shop left. It's really pretty too. And added a tatted butterfly. And I did a little cluster hanging off the bottom here with one of her little flowers that was in my design team package. And I just put some stickles on there. So it's got a little flower on a bulb pin with some beads. I had one flower left of that one lace that I like so much, and I just couldn't just throw it away. So I attached it onto the bulb pin with a little bling in the center, and then attached a little tiny floral applique on the corner, and I did a little blue bow there too with some embroidery floss. So the whole thing, when it's closed, this will kind of dangles out the bottom. And this one is also going to be a paper journal. It's in the middle. It's in the progress of being made, but it's really about the cover. This design team project was about making these beautiful covers from this fabric that Kim had in her shop, and just showing you that they really can be made into some beautiful little books or journals. whatever you choose to do with them. And they're fun, a fun thing to work with. So if you're interested in seeing how to bead the button to make for flower centers, I will attach that on the end of this video. And otherwise, I hope you guys all have a wonderful week, and thanks for stopping by. Bye for now. As you look at some close-ups of these books, journals that I have made, don't forget to check out the links below in the description box. Go to AngeldreamCraftsKim on Etsy and pick up some of these beautiful laces and trims and blings. And check out all the designers as well. Their links are in the description box below. Okay, so I'm back and I'm just going to show you how I do the beading on to make a beaded, what I call a beaded button. I haven't seen this anywhere else. Someone else probably has done it. I'm not aware, so can't give credit to anyone, but I'm not saying it's my idea because who knows. This particular thread that I have chosen right now has a pink, it's sort of pink metallic thread, but it's strong enough for beading, for this type of beading anyway, and it makes it so that the clear beads have a bit of a pink hue to them because you can see the thread through them. So I really like how that looks. Now this button, I've done most of the beading on it, so you can see the pink through the white little clear, and there's some white beads on there too. But I just feel like it needs another row or two. I'm not sure exactly how many more bead wraps it needs, but it's got a little bit of a space here where I can still see the button through. I'm picking up 4 or 5 buttons. You sort of have to figure how many buttons it takes to come around and wrap up around the edge of your button. I just would like some of the clearer ones to be up on top. I think that's enough. So they just go down your needle, and then you either wrap from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom. That doesn't really matter, whatever you decide. I'm holding on to this button by the threads underneath, my starting threads, but if not, you would hold on to the side. And you just want to take it, wrap it round, which I'm going to switch my fingers and hold on to the side. You're going to wrap the beads around, and you're going to come up through the holes in the center. So it becomes more difficult to come through the holes when you're getting near the end, because of course you've got lots of beads on here, but you just sort of wiggle around until you find it. The other thing is that I do use beading needles. They're very thin needles, so that because these are 11/0 seed beads. I find that if you use bigger beads, it's much harder to obviously you can't use the bigger beads on these tiny buttons I use. Most of the buttons I choose are this type, and they're between around 9 and 10 millimeters, which is around 3/8 of an inch. I just find that this type works well. These have the 4 holes, and actually this one does as well. This one's the little bit smaller. And then you can do it with 2 holes as well. It's actually easier with 4 holes because you're able to space out your wrapped beads a little bit more. I've put that one in there and it's wrapped in place, and I'm happy with that now. I think it looks okay. So I'm just going to take this back down through the bottom, the thread, so that I can tie it off. And then I just tie it off against the ones that I have on the back. And of course I had to add in thread because I didn't have enough. I find that if you start with too long of a thread, it gets really tangled. And so that's all tied off now. And I won't cut my ends super short just yet, but I am going to cut them off a little bit here. And there you can see. And you can see it has that sort of, these are clear beads with a white button underneath, but it has a bit of a pink hue to it. Let me just show you how I finish it off, and then I'll show you what it looks like in the flower that I was planning to put it in. So here I'm just putting a dab of glue, hot glue in the center. You could use whatever kind of glue you have. If it's not a hot glue, obviously it's going to take longer to set up. That's the only reason I use hot glue. And I just put it onto something, a silicone surface of some kind. This is just a little spatula that I have that I use for crafting. It's very handy with hot glue. And just let that set up. And that's going to seal the back of all the threads, and it'll seal your knot as well, which is important because you don't want it coming undone. And you can see that that has produced this nice seal of hot glue there. And now I'm going to cut my threads off right close up so they're not visible. And there is the beaded button. And of course, being this is tacked on at the end of that video, you already saw where I put it. So I'm going to show you though again, and this is how it all started. There she is in the middle of that flower. And you can really see the pink hue of the threads against the white background. And of course, the little pink doily in here helps draw out the pink thread in that button as well. But it's much clearer for me, to my eye. I can see the pink threads very clearly. And I just think they make the prettiest flower centers. Well, I showed you the buttons, how I choose my buttons and the sizes. And I'm just working on a blue one here as well. And this one's not as far along as that one was. And you can see all the beads here. And if you lay it down and go to pick it up, give it all a good tug to tighten up your beads, because they do get a bit loose when it's just laid down. And if you hold your thread tight and then put your thumb on top of your beads there, that'll give you a strong enough surface. There's my beading needle, and this is a beading thread as well. And I got both on Amazon. I can probably find the links to the ones I purchased and put them in the description box below. I am in Canada, but I know that this type of product is available on the American Amazon for sure. Now again, you sort of have to figure out how many beads it takes to go over the top of your button. Oops, sorry guys. You have to figure out how many beads it takes to go over the top of your button and around to the back. The first time you pick up your beads, you just want to measure that out. And then after that, you can just pick up the same number every time. Pick up a certain number of beads, whatever you've decided, counting out. Okay, you slide them down your thread, and there they all sitting there. You can see them. And there is 1, 2, 6 of them. And again, these are 11/0 seed beads, so they are small, but if you want to make bigger centers, then you're going to use bigger buttons and bigger beads, and they'll be bigger. I like the small ones. So you can see the beads go wrapped around the side of the button and to the back, and then that's where your needle is going to come up. This one has 4 holes. And I'm going to go into this hole here. And always try and keep your working beads pulled to one side. I'm right-handed, so I keep them pulled to the left. I always keep everything pulled over to the left. This is my tail. I try to leave my tail long, and I tied it at the back before I started because I'm going to use it at the end to tie off again, and then I'm going to seal it with my glue. So I don't like it to be cut off early because it might end up coming loose on you, and then you're working away and suddenly your whole project's coming undone. So you can see those beads wrap nicely around there, and they will push over closer as I add more beads to the right. The string has come up. It's ready here to go. And I'm going to count out another 6 beads. This is just a beading mat that I'm beading off of. These are also available on Amazon. If you're going to do any beading, I just think they're a godsend because although you can drop your beads all off your needle like I just did there, your beads don't run away from you when you're trying to collect them with your needle, and it makes your life a lot easier. I highly recommend getting a mat like this. They're just called a beading mat. I can put a link to the one that I got in the description box, and then you can get an idea. So again, slid the beads down. They're all ready to do the wrap. Again, coming up in that same hole, I'll do a few wraps out of each of the 4 holes. So it's there, it's ready to be wrapped. Wrap it round, come up through the hole of the button and pull it tight. And as you pull it tight, it wraps itself around. And you just keep doing that until you're done. So every once in a while your tail will get in the way there. Just tuck it behind and hold it with your fingers. If you hold the project in your non-dominant hand and keep your other hand doing the beading and try and complete the project in one go, it really is the best. Because if you let it go and set it down, it does tend, the beads loosen up. It's a little fiddly when you pick it up, as some craft projects can be, to kind of get everything back where you want it. So that would be my suggestion when you're first learning, and once you get the hang of it, then it's not so much a problem. So again, slide your beads down. They're in the right position to wrap. Wrap around the button. I'm going to go one more time in that 3rd hole, always keeping to the right. Even when you're going through the hole, keep to the right. Keep your stuff that's completed to the left. If you're left-handed, I would imagine it would go the other way. So you can see I have all these wraps on here, using up 3 of the holes in the button, and now I've got one hole left, and I'll finish off by putting the last. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'll come back and we'll go from there. So I've got my last 6 beads loaded on my needle here, and I'm going to hold them down and get them into place to do the last wrap. And again, coming around to the back of the button, coming up through the hole, and then pulling those beads tight into place. And there is the button complete. So it is a bit fiddly and it does take a little bit of time, but I don't think it's that difficult. Now I want to go back down. Make sure you pick a different hole in the button, of course, to go back down, because you're going to be tightening up your thread here. So there's the top, how it looks. And I'm just going to go around to the back, and I'm going to, I've dropped this down onto my mat now, so it's a little bit farther away from the camera. So let me just zoom in so that you can see. Okay, so you're zoomed in now, and all I'm doing is tying. So I'm tying the working thread off with the tail on the back side of the button here. And I tie it a couple of times. This thread is very, very thin, this beading thread, which is why it's so nice, because it does go through any size bead as well. Okay, tied that off a few times. I'm not skimpy with my knotting. I'm going to pull the threads off to the one side. I'm going to do my dab of glue. And like I said, you can use any glue you want. It's just setup time is different, right? And with hot glue, I like to use anything that silicone will work. You can use them. There's silicone pads that they sell in the dollar store that work great. There's silicone spatulas that work great, regular size spatulas, or I just happen to have this little crafty one. So give it a few seconds to set up, and then it usually pops off the silicone as soon as it's ready, and then you see you have that plug on there, and now you can cut your threads off. And there's beaded button. And then I can just show you, like with this one, I have this little flower I've made up with some crochet and tatting, and I just think this would look really pretty in the center of it. And you can add flat back pearl like that to the center if you want. because you can sort of see a little bit where your holes are. Sometimes the beads go closer together, just depending on how your beads fit. And sometimes you don't see it as much, but if you do and you don't like that, you can just put something in the center. This is a little pointed, has a point on it, a little piece of bling. It's out of an old necklace, and you can put that in. Looks very pretty as well. So there are ways to alter how that looks. This is another one I worked on earlier. This was a little bit bigger button. This button was 20 millimeters or just around, no, 13 millimeters, sorry, and was around which is just under half an inch. And when you bead them up, of course, they get bigger. So this one is now about 3/4 of an inch. And this one actually fits really nicely in this little flower that I made, which is again crocheted with a little bit of lace. And again with this one, I just think with the pinky beads, this little piece of bling, a piece of bling like this, looks really pretty in the center. And then when we finished up as well, and I have a little yo-yo here, I've left the center the size of the button that I wanted to put in, so I just measured that out ahead of time when I was finishing off my yo-yo. I added this little beaded button in the center, and we'll put a little pearl, I think, in the middle of that one. And I think it looks very pretty. There's blue and purple and pink in the material of this yo-yo, so it just blings up that yo-yo quite nicely. And I really like that's how I think these centers look, is that they really sort of elevate the center of your flower quite nicely, which I think is really pretty. I hope that you feel like you know now how to do a beaded button. And if you have some beads or you want to pick up some beads, a lot of my beads that I have are just from the dollar store, so they're not perfect in any way, which is why sometimes, you know, they'll stick out a little bit here or there, or they don't lie all completely flat. And you just adjust them. You know, sometimes you have to pick one that's a little bit smaller and then it all lies perfectly. You don't need anything fancy, and they're a lot of fun. Thanks for stopping in and staying, if you stayed till the end and saw my tutorial. Thank you very much for watching it to the end, and I appreciate you all very much. Talk to y'all soon. Bye for now.